All right, well, I c- all right,
Sorry,
good. Welcome.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, we got day 10 of the What School Could Be University of Kentucky Next Generation Leadership Academy. Today, we're going to be jumping into competencies, measures that matter. And like Justin said, we have a lot of activities for you to work and construct meaning today. So we're excited to see what you come up with. We do have a couple people in cars. So if they're in your group, bring them along. Don't ask them to participate, but bring them along and kind of like help them understand what's going down. Yeah, it's a busy day, so let's jump into it, Justin.
Okay. Yeah, lovely. Ben has been putting links to the Padlet. I also just threw a link over to the deck. There's a couple things I want to do. I'll pop open a deck and we'll talk about today's flow. Before we do that, Ben, let's just give them a reminder about next week. Can we give a little preview of next week? Next week is our wrap-up week of the entire Academy experience. And so just sort of prepping you. We had actually on site at our Next Gen Leadership Academy yesterday, our last day of an academy. And so I have the last day in mind. The Northern Kentucky team, some of the folks in the room were there at that last day yesterday outside of Lexington. And so, yeah, it's on my mind. So I feel like I should remind you all before we get into competencies, because once we get into this space, like we're going to be deep and we will forget things.
Yeah, well, and also we have a special guest on Tuesday, Capono, who is the executive director of What School Could Be. He wrote a book with Jennifer Klein called The Landscape Model of Learning, and he's going to come sort of share that philosophy or that sort of idea with us and how it sort of relates and supports like pretty much everything we've been talking about up to now. And he's also going to join us on Thursday when we have our exhibition. So I hope people are not too nervous about that. We don't want you to be nervous. We're excited to see, what you have to share. And like I said, if you have any questions, just like ping us, let us know. But that's pretty much going to take most of our time on Thursday. All right, Justin's queuing up. And we're just a little preview. We are going to get into Chat GPT again today because I know you guys are excited.
We are indeed. Now that we have this tool, and actually, Lori, apparently you are a Chat GPT convert at this point. Is that right? What we're hearing?
Yeah.
So yes, actually, you're going to be a little bit shocked today. If we get as far as I intend to try to get us today, we are going to get a little bit toward rubric design, and you're going to be surprised how good Chat GPT is at building rubrics, which is, I think, for most of us as educators, not one of my favorite tasks as an educator is to build the rubrics. And so, I think we can potentially do some offloading of or compressing or the fancy Ben language from Tuesday of rubric building. Okay, so today's flow, I want to spend some time distinguishing competency-based education from this sort of task that we're going to do today. I don't necessarily think they're the same thing, but I want to hear more from all of you around that. Then we're going to sort of practice. We're going to pick some competencies. We're going to unpack those competencies. We're going to organize those competencies. We're going to align them to learning progressions. And if we're doing really well, we might even then ask Chat GPT to go ahead and build us a rubric for a learning progression. And if we're rocking it, and ultimately, I either want to end or begin by showing you a deep dive into an overall performance assessment model that has been fully built, so that you can see like what does a completed model look and feel like. So I'm happy to do that either at the beginning or at the end. I sort of feel like it goes better at the end, but I'm voice and choice. If you feel like, hey, we just need to see it first and then we'll do all the hard work, I'm happy to do that too. I unpacked Envision Schools, and I've got a crazy sun going on in my room right now.
So we're going to ask, so Justin, you're asking everybody to let you know in the chat, I suppose, whether
Correct,
they would
yes,
rather
exactly.
see that now or at the end. And can you give us one more explanation of what you're asking them to choose between?
Okay.
I mean, I know now in the end, but what are you going to show them?
So I just want to show you a deep dive into Envision Schools handbook that they give out to families and to students that explains the whole sort of process around being a performance assessment school. And that relies on them having competencies and rubrics and all of the things that we need to talk about today. So I can show you what finished looks like if it helps you to see finished at the beginning, or we can work our way towards it. And then at the end, we'll be like, oh, now it makes sense. I see what it looks like. So I'm happy with either one. So over in the chat, if you want to begin with the end in mind, or if you want to like explore our own way and then see a finished model.
Share the map early. I like whole to part, but I'm flexible. Yeah.
Okay. We got 2 votes, team. So if you don't like Mark and Kristen's votes, you better jump in.
Begin with it. All right.
All right. Okay. So that's perfectly fine. I'm going to scroll down a few slides and show you.
I want to make one suggestion, because I think that's a great way to do it. But I would also ask that people revisit the handbook after today's session. So between now and the next session, can you please revisit the handbook and then sort of maybe think again about what you're reading to see if you have any sort of deeper understanding. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put the link to the whole thing over in the chat. I think it's going to pop open in the Padlet. And so if that doesn't work, then it's this Envision Schools College Success Portfolio Defense Model. That opens up a like 30-page PDF of everything that they explain to families about how this whole thing works. And today is really a coming together of a lot of the component parts of the academy. Now are sort of we've covered almost all the tools you need to bring this similar document together in your own spaces. And this type of a document is a sustainability document. If you can get your teams here, you can sustain this. And so this is where we need to get to. And so you can pop it open and scroll through the whole thing, but I just want to feature a few things. So I'm going to switch over to share and sort of share a few of the items and sort of how they wind up presenting those items. So this is a few years old, this particular portfolio, but it hasn't really changed much. It changed a lot during the pandemic, but this was a super stable model. This is Envision Schools, which is a network of charters out of California, but that network of charters was heavily supported by Stanford University and Scale, who Envision wound up sort of subsuming that center out of Stanford. And so that center called Scale on Assessment, Learning, and Equity is sort of now just part of the Envision model. So this is what a full completed one looks like. We early need to pick what are our sort of portrait of a learner anchor competencies. What are the big top level things that we want all kids to know, be able to do? And for them, and remember, they're an older model, they're 20 some years old. And just like so us at STEAM Academy, like we did habits. I think had they started now, they would have done portrait of a learner skills, but for them, because they're older, they wanted these 4 major things from their students: research, inquiry, creative expression, and analysis. Those are the 4 major top level competencies. And even on this first page, you can see the bullet points are then beginning to unpack into so what does this actually look like? What is a kid actually doing? And those sort of sub bullet points are important. And we're going to build some of those sub bullet points today because it's really the bullet points underneath these big portrait of a learner competencies that are the more important parts. Not to community, they love the graphic design but for your operation of the school, the bullet points matter a lot. So they start there. They then get that out into language that kids can understand. Just like on Tuesday, I showed you how STEAM Academy is trying to translate this into like I can statements. Here you can see them translating it into we can statements, like we identify, we analyze, we evaluate, so that they're helping learners understand like what is it that we expect you to be able to do in this equation. Then they layer and they tell the kids in advance, like, when are we going to assess you? So in 9th grade, you're going to be assessed twice with performance assessment tasks. And those are going to be pretty sort of scaffolded for the 9th graders. And they're not going to be sort of full performance assessments. We're going to target specific domains in the rubric. We're not going to apply the entire portrait of a learner to the 9th graders. But by the time you look down 10th, 11th, and 12th, you can see that we are going to begin to apply the entire portrait of a learner expectations to our 11th and 12th graders. And so you can see how they're explaining to kids and families, here's what you should expect to be assessed on, here's the amount of assessment we're going to do, and here's why we're doing this assessment, right? So you're really preloading all of this and not necessarily trying to like build all this on the fly, because your community is going to get really confused. So they're very upfront. When you sign up to be a student at this school, you're getting a clear explanation of, I have to do these things, and these things are required to move forward in the learning journey. Then the kids are like, so, but what am I going to present? What are going to be the artifacts, right? Like, that's always the thing. The kids are like, well, I don't know what I'm presenting. And so while there's obviously agency and choice for the students in terms of what they want to present, here you can see them trying to explain to the kids, like, okay, so look, we've got major inquiry projects happening all over this school. And those inquiry projects should be aligning to a lot of the major kind of artifact component parts that you're going to need for this portfolio process at the end, right? So you can see where even math is showing up. Like, we think that there should be some kind of math artifact that makes its way into the portfolio. So they're being pretty clear with kids about like, hey, you have lots of inquiries that you should be able to pull from to build this portfolio. They're also clear about how they're going to be judged on a rubric, right? So like, what are the categories to which you intend to judge me? So for them, they have a 4-part rubric: emerging, developing, proficient, and advanced. And so they're telling kids really early, like, these are going to be the indicators that we're trying to find and map you to, like, where are you currently at on this skill? And you can see up there at the top, that's actually language at the top that I want you to look at, in that they are not linking together the sort of performance assessment, emerging, developing, proficient, advanced to A, B, C, D, fail kind of thing. They're intentionally trying to not link those together, in that how a kid is overall doing at the final reporting might look subtly different than what they're getting on a portfolio score. Because a kid may still be developing, but really, in all of our judgments, has done really well this year. So you might be in the developing category, but still get an A, because you've been working your butt off, you've been developing your skills. And so they want kids to know that, like, we're not going to link these categories to letter grades right up front. Okay, then they have built rubrics. And if you download that full document, you will see a lot of rubrics, a lot of pages of rubrics where they are making clear what does emerging, developing, proficient, and advanced look like across each of the big categories that they want to assess to, right? So inside of this particular one, around textual analysis, they're looking for arguments and evidence and these specific indicators. So they're trying to tell kids, I will tell you this gets fuzzy, right? I've done a lot of these both in higher ed. We've done a lot of these in the K-12 world, at STEAM and other places. Like, you're just trying to provide guiding language in these rubrics, not only to the assessor, but also to the kid, so that the kid has a sense of how what does good look like in their eyes? And so these things are very much guidance documents more than like gotcha grading, like, oh, look at you, you are only emerging on this category. So these rubrics are
I
not,
think,
yeah, jump in.
yeah, no, I think also the reason I think rubrics can be really powerful is they can be used between students, they can be used between teachers and students, but they should be used continually. It shouldn't be, this is whipped out at the end. This should be given to a student at the beginning, because you want to have them have an understanding of what it is they're trying to achieve. Like, you should have examples of what they're trying. So you should never ask, a child to do something without showing them that thing that you're asking them to do, right? So rubrics are like Justin mentioned earlier, sometimes really difficult to make, but we'll play a little bit with ChatGPT later. But they're really powerful in the sense that they actually give kids direction, right? And so, like, whereas like a score, like you got an 80, an 80%, or I got a B, that doesn't tell me anything I need to know to move to that next step in progression towards mastery, right? Or full understanding. So rubrics really sort of allow that child to understand how to move to that next step.
Okay, awesome. So let me continue this journey through this document, and you've got the full document, remember? So like, you don't have to take my word on all this stuff. You can read and process it. I'm just snapping some highlights so you can see some of the major anchor points along the way. Okay, so then as now they've shared a rubric, they are trying to layer out to the kids like, okay, so as you're bringing together your portfolio, now at this point, this is the whole thing. This would be a 12th grade defense. So, or even maybe 10th anyway. They're saying like, here's the rubrics that we want you to sort of be keeping in mind. So you can see each of those bullet points is one of their rubrics. So their entire performance assessment system is functioning off of 7, 8, 9, 10 rubrics. Okay, so the entire school model runs off of 10 of those rubric documents, and they're trying to tell kids like, you got to speak to all 10 in this one portfolio defense. Envision is a little bit heavy on that front, in my judgment, but that is sort of how they are layering it out there to kids. Okay, so where's my mouse? Here it is. Okay, so now like they want to be clear with kids about like, so the actual defense, how's this going to go, right? Like, what should I expect? What is this going to feel like? How much time is it going to take? Who's going to be doing what? And so here you can see them explaining to kids like, okay, these moments of defense look like this. It's a pretty intense hour-long kind of meeting where we're moving fast through an agenda, and that you are presenting deeply some serious artifacts. And look at the amounts of time that Envision is taking on some of these artifacts. Those are deep dive amounts of time on artifacts. Rather than, sort of surface level, how many of these can we get done, how quickly? And you're going to feel that need to can we run 200 of these in 4 hours? It's the depth matters here. But Envision is replacing lots of other assessment. So they're not just duplicating, and they're not just adding on, this is the major assessment. So there isn't a different summative major assessment that is going on in a lot of these big classes, like an English class, for instance.
But there's lots of formative along the way, right?
Yes, lots of formative along the way. That's what mostly is happening. And everybody, both the instructors and the kids, are getting ready for this moment. Like, this is its own major performance task. And so there's a lot of sort of preparation going into this. And they're very adamant at Envision about like, your family should be there. Like, this is one of those moments where it's a student-led defense and a student-led conference as well as a defense. Like, they really want you to show your best self in this moment. When that defense is happening, there is, they lay out to the kids, like, here is the little form that we're going to be using as evaluators to sort of fill out and give you feedback during your defense. So that's in there as well. So you can go check out the sort of that form that takes that job. And then they have a digital system that is collecting all of this data. And so as they are filling out those forms, that is going into a program called Tote, which a professor here at UK actually built. That is aggregating the data for all the students, right? So that we as a school can say, how are we doing on this particular measure, right? So innovation and creativity, how are we doing overall? Looks like service is their lowest indicator for the particular school that was being assessed here. So all of that then hits this kind of a tool. That's the last slide. I know that feels like a massive amount. That's, like you all wanted to begin with the end. Let me stop there and get some feedback. You don't get here in a year, okay? This is not something that you implement like in a few months or over a summer. This is a journey that it took them many years to get to. At STEAM, we're 10 years old, and we're just now fully mastering this space. But it's really important for deeper learning leaders to see this, because you have to know how to get to sustainability. And I think lots of people are off jumping into this world, and they're in it for like the various reasons to get promoted or whatever is in a leader's head. But if you're really into the deeper learning game and you want to help a school get to sustainability, this is the kind of build that you're going to need to be able to do. And it is, however, like, it's not impossible. And that, I think, I want you to feel both things. It's heavy, it's hard, it's high level educator work. Like, this is super high level educator work that we're going to play with this morning. But simultaneously, it is doable. Many schools have done it. There are paths to follow. There are things to replicate. And now you have ChatGPT, which will build your rubrics for you. So like, we're going to speed this. We're going to compress this with ChatGPT. All right, that's a look at the whole picture. You have that document from Envision in the Padlet. You can probably go search and get a more recent version if you're really into like, what's the 2023 version of this look like? You can go search it up, and Envision is great about sharing. So they'll put it out there. Envision is also probably gold standard. So I want you to keep that in mind in terms of like, there's a bunch of schools doing a full system like this that's not as pretty packaged. There's not a 30-page document. So like, also at STEAM, we don't have a 30-page document on this yet.
Well, and I think it's good to note also, Justin, that like work as good can be done even though the time hasn't been put into creating a document like this, right? Like, ultimately, like, I love when stuff is written down because it gives it shape, and it like you said, there's legacy, and we can point to it and you can share it out and it can help other people. But sometimes that just doesn't happen, and everybody's in the business of the doing of all of this, right? So that's not to say if you don't have time to do this, you can still do amazing things. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the set of skills we're playing with today. There's a whole bunch of skills in there that require development, but you are just going to help a school get through the first couple steps of those. The most important thing is, as you adopt portraits of a learner, which is all the fun stuff and your community is excited. That's what we did on Tuesday. Woo, school boards, yay, they feel proud of themselves. Look what we did. You do not stop there. You start this journey. And so all we really need to do as a team is to start this journey. And then a team at a school helps to sustain it over the few years, and you'll get to somewhere decent, because at some point teachers do start to prefer this. It's deeper, it's richer, it's more meaningful. If you go through a few student defenses of learning, the depth of knowledge that you get about a kid is so different than what like a report card tells you, that you're like, I like the depth, I want the relationship. And so you are capable of sustaining it, a team is capable of sustaining it, but what a leader must do must is immediately get into this journey that we're going to need to get into today. Ready for that? All right, let's go. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I want to distinguish a couple of worlds for us. I think it's important. It's been important on our journey in Kentucky to be really cautious and careful about competency as a term. And so I want us to like develop a skill set today around competency as a word. So this is where we essentially left off on Tuesday, in that we were all about step number 1 and step number 2 on Tuesday, right? We were developing a portrait of a learner. We're publishing that portrait of a learner. School board feels good about themselves. Yay. So now we're going to get off into this step number 3, right? We're going to develop a pretty robust performance assessment system around competencies. Once you have that, you can see the journey continues: instructional design, community engagement, policy adoption, all those things. And so this is the series of steps that we've been taking, and just sort of reminding you, we at the Academy sort of worked backwards in that we built a lot of inquiry skills early, then we built performance assessment skills, then we finally got to Portrait of a Graduate, but now you work your way backwards and we sort of bring together the whole package. That's what today is about. Okay, so we are going to have a competency light approach, okay, not a full-on competency-based assessment system. That full-on competency-based assessment system may someday be in your futures schools. However, it is pretty unattainable for most schools right away. And so this is one of the domains where you are going to make strategic leadership decisions about what you're not going to pursue. And so we want to know what we don't want to pursue in this world of competency-based education. So just open it up to the room real fast with this prompt, like, where are you all at in this sort of distinguishing between graduate competencies and sort of competency-based education? How in love with the term competency-based education are you, and why do you love it, if some of you are? Everybody's like, I'm scared now. I'm sorry. Maybe we shouldn't have started with Envision.
Yeah.
I have a question, clarifying question.
Yeah.
Is competency-based similar to like that notion of clear learning targets and really pinpointing, like I'm not versed in competency-based work, but I mean, I can imagine what it is based on my knowledge of pedagogy. So I think of it as performance-based assessment that aligns to very clear learning targets, but that could be off.
Yeah, good. I'm happy about that. And you're part of the What School Could Be world. And I mean, so like I would expect you all to have a richer definition of competency-based, but competency-based can at some base fundamental level just be like mastering standards, and like we master standards. So there's a bunch of words that will start to get thrown together here. Mastery is a word that we now have on the table, right? Because we're going to master a competency theoretically, right? And so we can build a mastery-based learning model. Maybe we could build the mastery-based transcript at this point, right? And so there's attaching words that go here. There are attaching ideas like standards-based grading that go here, right? Where we want to use the standards as a set of competencies and then try to grade to those standards and report to those standards so that the report cards look different. Our friends here at UK, Tom Guskey and Leanne Young and others are huge advocates for better reporting, better grading and reporting to families. So that world attaches to this space as well. So there's attaching worlds. But we're not going to try to master all of those. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Just add a little bit. I think our friends in New Hampshire who worked with PACE and as their model of state accountability. People like Justin Vanderels and Brian Stack would say that the outcome of competency-based education in that model was performance. And so all of the design instructionally, it was mastery-based, standards-based, but it was about performance. And performance was always about interdisciplinary work, so blurring the lines. And one of the things that John says is that you're really there with competency-based education when performance assessment happens and kids are happy while they're assessing and they don't know they're being assessed. So that's, when I think of competency-based education and the end outcome where I would like it to be, that's my vision, is that we would someday be there. And so what, to go back to what you said earlier about it's scary to say anything, when you look at what Envision's doing, leadership in this space is, I would encourage people to say it's like water on rocks. We watch water hit rocks and we think nothing's happening. But over time, there are examples all over the world of, what a major impact water has on rock. And so, your work over 10 years and Envision's work over time, I was thinking that yesterday as I watched those exhibitions. It's water on rock. That's what's happening in this movement. So that would be my 2 cents worth about, what is competency-based and where is it headed? Ultimately, it's to performance assessment.
Yeah, thanks, James. I like where you ended that, in that while we're going to use this word competency, I think it's in all of our best interests in the near term to focus on performance assessment and not get ourselves lost in this big thing that is out there called competency-based education. So let's learn a little bit more about it. Let me share you a few concerns I have about this broader space and why I think it's really important to hone in on a specific thing here.
So yeah, let me jump in real quick too, Justin. I'll just add that not everything has to end in a performance, right? So I think that you can also think of this as, competency-based learning is built on evidence-based assessment, right? So they're creating products that likely exist in the real world, right? That demonstrate like a deep understanding. So I think that's sort of like when you start to think about competency-based education, sort of what helped me is actually putting myself in the role of the student, or thinking about, okay, what is it that the students are doing that changes, right? So competency-based learning, students receive like feedback is a huge part of it. So they receive timely feedback and allows them to differentiate sort of how they learn. They have more choice in how they engage with concepts, skills, and ideas, more choice in the products they're producing to produce evidence of learning, and they get to choose also, like, sometimes pacing, right? And time and space as well. So these are all sort of things that sort of live in that competency-based learning space. So I think we can also think about it at different levels. So we can think about it as like, what am I doing different as a teacher? How are we as a school, communicating learning to parents? And then how are students actually engaging and learning differently to produce, what are they doing to produce evidence of understanding?
Lovely.
Hopefully that wasn't
Thank you,
more
Holly,
confusing.
over for the chat. Yep, over in chat. This is the pathway where you can get yourself away from percentage-based grades. And that's exciting, and I want to do that. But it also is, we've got to have quite a bit of infrastructure built before we just turn loose of our prior grading model. And so this is definitely the pathway that lays the foundation for a completely different assessment model, and reporting and grading and all the things. But to get there, I care deeply about the foundation that's built below those big policy changes. A lot of schools just switch to standards-based grading overnight, and they don't really change much of what's going on in the classroom at all. And so we're just, nothing really changed here, but we're telling a slightly different story at the end. And so we care generally deeply about changes to the actual learner experience of school. And so we're going to focus more on changes to learner experience of school, and then we're going to figure out sort of the storytelling later. Okay, enough talking for me. I'm going to let one other Justin talk for just a second, and then we will dive into some of this work and get ourselves out into breakouts. So I'm going to switch back over here. Share sound, share this desktop. All right. So just real briefly, there are lots of definitions in this space. I'll show you a couple, but here is Justin Reich. He's a professor at MIT. He runs the MIT Teaching Systems Lab. I put the links up in the Padlet, giving a background on competency-based education. He's not my favorite thinker on competency-based education. Rose Colby and Chris Sturgis are my favorite thinkers, but I couldn't find great little snippet videos from them. So we're going to go with Justin.
Problems that CBE has the potential to address. What exactly is competency-based education? There's a single agreed upon definition, but we see some common elements in programs that call themselves competency-based. Most school curricula today are organized around how much time students spend in different courses. The amount of time that students spend, say, in math class is fixed. 52 minutes for factoring polynomials, 180 days for algebra, 4 years of high school math. But the learning is variable. Some students master the material and many don't. Competency-based education tries to shift the emphasis from how time is allotted to whether or not students can demonstrate well-defined competencies. Here, the competencies are fixed, a commitment that every student will master the fundamentals, but the time invested and the learning pathways vary from student to student. To master competencies, students need to know what the competencies are. Teachers in schools make competencies explicit and help students track their progress towards those competencies. Students use the competencies as a map to the content and skills that they need to learn in school. Assessment of these competencies is an ongoing process rather than a single summative event. In schools today, if a student fails a test, the class often keeps moving forward through new material. In competency-based environments, students are often given more than one opportunity to demonstrate competency and extra support as needed. If a student fails a test or a section of a test, it means that they need more support there so those shortcomings don't keep compounding as the concepts get more complicated. In the very best implementations of CBE, these elements together mean that students and teachers know what they need to teach and learn. Students have some choice and agency in how they learn and how they demonstrate their learning. When students struggle, teachers and students work together to address the problem rather than continuing along and hoping that students will figure it out later. One challenge in understanding competency-based education is a proliferation of terms and definitions. We use the term competency-based education, but people referring to proficiency-based learning or mastery-based learning are often talking about similar things. Some learning competencies look very similar to learning objectives that you might see for an individual.
All right, let's cut it off there. That is a great sort of baseline introduction to competency-based education. And let me unpack it a little bit further, because what I want our focus to be is around graduate competencies and less on competency-based education. Part of the reason I want to be super careful about this world of competency-based education is there is some stuff out there that calls itself competency-based education, which really concerns me. For instance, you can get a degree in as little as 6 months because you can get demonstrated mastery of all of your existing skills and like pay us $80,000 and we're happy to do it. I worry deeply about moving down this road and everyone's saying like, oh, we're competency based now. And by us sort of stepping away from some anchor things that we've had in our systems, like time as an anchor, it does concern me in terms of quality, and there will be a race to the bottom, right? Like we want to make this is essentially do as little as possible to get a degree, do as little as possible to get your high school diploma. And we just need to be massively careful about that. If you pay attention to K-12 districts, K-12 districts love to sign up for online learning software where it's competency-based, and like students that are struggling on all the other fronts are put into some kind of an online program, and like suddenly we click a few things and we give out a diploma. I'm worried about it. I'm not necessarily saying it's the wrong thing to do, but you can see the danger. I hope you're just seeing the danger in the space, and why we are going to have to get into this with a ton of intentionality to be able to distinguish what good looks like versus using these exact same ideas to race to the bottom. Okay, so I love me some research. I put some research in the Padlet. I think this is a pretty recent 2020 deep dive review of competency-based education world out there, and I think this is pretty accurate. Like, it's getting a lot of buzz, but we don't really know yet. There's not enough research to really feel serious that this is a better approach in terms of student outcomes, because it's not being measured enough, and these outcomes wind up being different. And so, like, this is not necessarily something that a MAP score is going to assess that easily. So just being cognizant of getting into this world of competency-based education, it's not as clear from a research standpoint. Like, from an inquiry learning standpoint, I can tell you quite clearly in the research, it's a superior way to do it. Remember, we're in the science of learning. Like, we know through research and science, we can be confident of our place. The broader this definition of competency-based education becomes, the less certain we can be in terms of our own sort of scientific grounding that this is a good idea. So for all of those reasons, I want us to be really intentional about our choices about what we're going to do in competency-based education. So this is Aurora Institute, who bought out Competency Works. That was Chris Sturgis's shop. She's one of the people I value the most in this space. They put out a 7-part definition, and they're empowered daily, meaningful assessment, timely, differentiated support, progress based on mastery, varied pathway and pacing. I want us to circle back on that one. Equity strategies driven by culture, structure, pedagogy, and rigorous common expectations. Okay, let me put some green check marks about what I like and big red X's about what I don't like for most schools getting their way into deeper learning. So here is a great report by Nellie May. Nellie May always does really nice work up in the Northeast. They looked under the hood of competency-based education, and I like the specific clear learning targets. Like, we should be doing that now. That's what we're going to work on today. Formative assessment that is helping students make progress towards those goals over time, requiring students to demonstrate mastery or meeting. I like meeting more than I like mastery. We'll get to that in a minute. Remember, that was a lesson from Francis Parker Charter Essential. Like, whoa, not every kid's going to master every single thing. Can they meet our standard? Meeting is enough. Meeting is success. Okay, fine. But what I'm going to put a big red X by right now is turning loose of time. Time is the most valuable commodity in almost all things on planet Earth, but it's also the most valuable commodity when it comes to our role in schools. Turning loose of time needs to be an extremely well-prepared decision, not something you do haphazardly overnight, because now we're competency-based and like kids can just progress and pass classes. And right now here in Lexington, probably won't get a lot of love for this locally, but it's okay. We are recording. It's fine. Like, kids are coming out of middle school with like 6 or 7 high school credits at this point, and like the plan is to like graduate high school in the sophomore year, and then they'll just be college students. I mean, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so I want us to be super careful about time. In different way of saying it out there is like the one we are going to be ultra cautious about is pacing and progression. So when you're good at this, then I think you get into pacing and progression, but all the rest of this competency-based stuff we're going to be working on. Because I just want you to be really careful to not open Pandora's box. This can get scary quickly. We at STEAM Academy got into this pretty rapidly. Like we had high school juniors, you're like, I'm done here. Like I've mastered all the things you've asked me to master, I'm out. And we were like, whoa, you are not ready to be an adult in society yet. Like just because you've checked our boxes does not mean you are adult ready. And so we had to get really intentional, really fast, because we went maybe too far too fast without having fully understood the implications of it all. Okay, so what we're going to do is this performance assessment system that aligns to competencies inherent in our portrait of a learner. That's the thing we're going to do. We're going to do this job as leaders without opening all the Pandora's boxes. Okay, so let's get to the work of it. Here's where
Justin,
we're going to
real quick, before we jump into that, I just wanted to share on the pad that I dropped some things from the Global Online Academy, which is a really great organization out of the US that has a really cool model where I won't go into it, but anyways, they have some really good stuff on competency-based education. So they have like an introduction, which is sort of simple. They have some really nice visuals that like I'm a very visual thinker, so it helped me deepen my understanding. Then they have like I've put on there 5 shifts for competency-based learning. So it sort of outlines what's changing. And then it goes into like classroom level stuff. And so it's like the 7 building blocks of competency-based classroom. So sort of like what I was talking about earlier, sometimes it's hard to envision what this looks like at the different levels. And so I think they do a good job of sort of walking you down that path of like, okay, so like I can understand what this is. And now I can actually understand how it's going to replace certain things and add certain things. And then I also now have a little bit of a better understanding of, what this looks like in the classroom. Like, for example, when James said like, exhibitions of learning and stuff, like that's one of the 7, right? So just wanted to point those out. They're on the Padlet if you have time. They're not very long.
Okay,
right,
so,
didn't mean to
yeah,
interrupt.
no worries. No worries. So we're going to get ourselves into work now. And what we need to do is to just pick ourselves out a couple of portrait of a learner skills. And so I'm going to put us out into 3 breakout rooms. And in that breakout room, I want you to just pick a portrait of a learner skill. Just one, settle on one as a team. I put a link to an activity over there. Susan Dougal on our team, who was part of the Shelby County effort and shared last time when we were together, if you remember, did a great job of like creating this master list of sub-competencies. You don't have to unpack it all right now. Just pin this. This is a great tool for you to have going forward. But what I want you to come back with in like 3 minutes is this is the portrait of a learner skill that really resonates with us. And I want each of the 3 breakout rooms to pick one, and we'll just roll with those for the rest of the day. Okay, so we just need to pick a couple of portrait of learner skills to play with and unpack this morning together. So I'm going to throw you out into breakout rooms, and I want you to use that activity link Google Doc that we just put out there and pick a couple of portrait of learner top level skills that we're going to play with. All right, does that make sense? Questions?
Yeah, what questions do y'all have before we jump into breakout rooms?
Okay,
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're just choosing, correct? We're just going to browse them, choose one. Got it.
Exactly. Yes, because we will unpack it later in a minute. But once you choose one, you can see the unpacking below it. This document lets you see like, oh, here's what all the sub skills would look like for this one. I like it or I don't. Okay, no worries. All right, go pick in the group just one portrait of a learner skill that deeply resonates. Off we go.
I love the face freeze. Just leave it recorded because the last time we forgot, and
Yeah.
it's easy for me to trim it out.
Okay, lovely. No worries.
Nice work. This is going good. I think you're doing a good job of making it clear.
Okay. All right, hopefully. This is hard. This is level 9 deeper learning leadership work here.
Mhm. Yeah, I was thinking earlier, with like the playbook idea, it might be interesting to have sort of an outline, like a playbook within a playbook, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
To develop these competencies, right? And sub-competencies, et cetera, like just like an outline, like here it is, you know what I mean? This
Mhm.
will help you get started. Here are the sections you need to think about, sort of thing.
Yeah, just like a big picture overview of these are the different moving parts that are all going to be moving simultaneously. So you need to see all these gears that are going to move together.
Mhm.
I know this is hard, but this is also like, you want to do this for real. I mean, if it was easy, we would have done it. So
Well, and I think maybe what happens is that it might be easy to lose focus because you're starting to get into the weeds here. And as educators, we'd love to like debate word meanings and you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes I think like you could get mired in this step. And then the linkage to the classroom practice and how you assess kids, ongoing, formative, right? And then how you communicate to parents. Those, I think, are two things that might cause friction, might be friction points.
I like the idea of friction points. That's a good idea in the playbook, like
Mhm.
projecting and addressing friction
Yeah.
points.
Here's
That's
some lubrication, for your friction points, you know what I mean? Like here's a file, you can file down these rough edges here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I really do hope they're making decisions quickly. And I'm going to pull them back pretty quickly.
Oh, your breakout room closing was 15 seconds, and then last week it was 45 or a minute. So I don't know what it is now.
Exactly.
It's fine. Like it doesn't matter.
Oh, this one's
I just
gonna be
timed
60.
it like. Okay. All right. Very good.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like yesterday was a great day.
It was. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
a good day. I mean,
Yeah.
the closing of an academy is always a good day. It
Yeah.
always is a day of like, you just have this feeling. It's a little bit of a transcendent feeling, blessed. When all the work gets put on display, like I get that same feeling that the teachers get when they do this work. Like at a defense moment, you get the feeling of like, God, I actually made a difference in this kid's life. And so exhibition day at Next Gen is always that same feeling for me of like, it's actually happening, people.
Yeah. All right, we did it.
Yeah, they didn't come back, so they were using the time. Okay, sorry for the strict timelines, but it doesn't matter that much for our purposes today, which one you picked. But I would like to hear, so from the 3 different rooms, like what was the big skill that you guys were talking about in the rooms?
We went with creativity.
Okay, lovely.
As we think about machine intelligence, we think that creativity is going to have to go faster.
Okay, I love it.
In room 2, we went with resilience. We just thought that was the basis.
Mhm.
Can't get to any of those other competencies unless you are resilient in your work.
Okay, awesome. So I thought we had a little message on resilience. I think I spelled that right. Okay. Alicia is popping in. Yeah, there it is, Mark. So, and then what is our last one?
We went with empathy, but
I
we
like
really like the intersection of empathy and collaboration. So we were talking about that.
Ooh, that's so good. Keep those intersections can be fun. And a lot of times, because these portrait of learners do need to be boiled down to a digestible number, a lot of times what you see is a mashup, right? So like empathetic collaborators as the skill that, so you do see that a lot. So if you felt that moving that direction, like do know that like, oh, these two might fit together, because we got to get this down to something that's going to look good on a graphic. And so, okay, so empathy was our third one. All right, awesome. Now I'm going to send you right back out and we are going to put compression to work. I want you to ask ChatGPT, someone in the room, ask ChatGPT to articulate. Here, I've got a slide. I'll just put the link over some of the language over into the chat. You can do it like this, right? So provide a list of 10 critical competencies for students seeking to master, insert your thing here. So go ask ChatGPT back out into the rooms what those competencies are that kids would need to have to actually develop those skills. And I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we're going to see if like the robots can help us speed up knowing what the competencies might be. All right, makes sense. Someone pulls up ChatGPT. Ben, can we get a link to the login page? I forget what it's called. It's called
yeah, I got it right here.
okay, lovely.
Oh, yeah.
So just one person needs to log in and then you can sort of share back out some of those results with the rest of the room. And you can copy and paste maybe over into chat as well. That's fine too. Okay, let's do that. Breakout rooms open.
So when you were talking about these competencies like communication and then the articulated skills underneath, would you say those are sub-competencies or skills that demonstrate the competency?
Yeah, skills is probably a better word at this high level than a competency. And I don't have a position yet on what is the right word at which level. But
I don't think it matters. Well, I think what's more important then is actually clearly articulating how you or your team or community will refer to the different levels, right?
Okay. The resilience one is a very narrow competency on the whole, very narrow portrait of a learner skill. You wouldn't see that too often at a top level. So I'm a little worried. I'm running ChatGPT 4 on resilience right now just to see what it came up with.
Yeah. I think
it
this
almost went
one calls
backward.
them, yeah. These on this doc, they're calling them descriptors, right?
Yeah, I like that too. I'm fine with any of these words. But ultimately, this is a competency. It is doing that job. And this is the entry point to a competency-based education system. And so I don't have a problem with these words mashing up. I just have a problem with don't turn green all the things all at once. It's a chaotic mess. Like we've got to do assessment well first, and then we can start to turn on the other things. Okay, I'm gonna pop in one and just see how it's going. The resilience one was Mark's room. That's the one I'm worried about.
All right. Did you mess with the prompt? I'll mess with the prompt.
Okay.
Good
awesome.
day when no one comes back early. It's a good day. People are
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, I got to pop into a couple of the rooms, and so what did you all think of? How did ChatGPT 4, probably ChatGPT 12, we'll just build the rubrics all at once, but ChatGPT 4, how did it do? Was it
You know
at
what I
least
did?
a good first draft? Could you consider
Yeah.
this to be like a good first draft?
You know what I did, Justin, while you were in there, because remember Justin and I were having a discussion on, okay, so does it matter whether you call the like sub competencies or descriptors or skills, that sort? So I started messing with that in my prompt. I put in competencies, then I put in descriptors, and actually just changing that one word changed half of the results that I got. So I think you might want to play with that if you're not getting if just not landing on things that you think are supporting that overall competency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, we're just trying to make this a little bit less onerous and scary. And so when there's little times we can plug in AI to speed something up. So we have a first draft, but I think Kristen in particular was like, I didn't love that first draft on empathy. Like maybe there's a different thing going on here, right? That's where you all were sort of feeling.
I think it's good for me, it made me think, so communication popped up, right? And different versions of communication. And so, what are we striving for here? Is it empathy or is it quality communication? So I think the draft helps to sort of unpack what we wish to see in student performance and sharpen it. So I think it's a useful tool for generating deeper conversation around competencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark. It's okay.
Well, I was gonna add, I think like our initial list we thought was really good, and then we could see that there were things missing from that list. But I think then you could go a level deeper and say, for example, ours was resiliency, and we talked about the need for a sense of purpose before students having a sense of mission and purpose, something that they're willing to work hard for. So I guess the next thing we could have ChatGPT'd is, how do you develop a sense of purpose, in whatever age student, and then you down a level. So yeah, you could do some extra digging.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like a little companion that's helping you think through these things and build out a paragraph or two of content on something pretty quickly. And like even basic definitions, because as you try to explain this stuff to kids, like when you get down to these lower levels and you're unpacking resilience into these sub skills, like you're going to need to help define all of those. And so that's where the AI can just help you define it. And this is not pro AI. We're just playing with AI to take the edge off and reinforce like the world is really changing. Let's go the other direction though. Activity link over in the chat. Now, this document, and I'll share screen just a little bit around this document as I send you off back into your rooms with this task. This is one of my favorite documents in deeper learning leadership work. This is heavy in advance, but this is like the kind of work that needs to happen at a school level to get to that place of sustainability. This is how you unpack a high-level portrait of a graduate, portrait of a learner skill into the component parts, translate those component parts into learning progressions, and then begin to map those learning progressions to rubrics, right? And what looks good and what doesn't. So this document is big and heavy. It unpacks 4 big top-level portrait of a learner skills. Our portrait of a learner skills are gone. The chat disappeared from me, Ben, but I think we were doing resilience, and we were doing
creativity, empathy,
and we were doing creativity. So creativity is in here. All of us, if you can in your breakout rooms go to collaboration, communication, creativity, or self-direction. The self-direction and the resilience might be, those two might overlap somewhat for me. And so the resilience team, you all might go there. And then the empathy team felt like you all were getting close to collaboration, and like collaboration's in the ballpark. So you all might go for collaboration in this document. You're not going to understand it all, but what I want you to do is take about 1 to 2 minutes to overview the whole layering of what collaboration or any of these things looks like. And then just have a brief discussion about like the component parts of the unpacking. Okay, and so scroll down in this document and you'll see that each of those big skills is a different color. So keep scrolling until a color changes, and then that tells you you're on the next big skill.
Yeah, so it starts by just defining, right, the emerging expert, strategic learner, advanced beginner, right? So that's how we move across that towards mastery, if you will, right?
Yeah, you can see them putting it on a 4-part continuum as well. Just like in Vision, they use different language than in Vision, but they're going to break it out into 4 sort of layers. There's no magic number. And in fact, single point rubrics are beginning to gain a lot of momentum in education. But nevertheless, this is how you would pull it apart into a 4-part rubric. And it's built all the way to the rubric in these documents. And so like, if you are thinking about putting collaboration in as one of your portrait of a learner skills, and you're like, what would that look like on a rubric? This, it looks like this, start with this, don't go try to rebuild it from scratch. Okay, back off into our rooms and sort of pick the big top level skill you want to explore and spend a little time exploring quietly, then come back together as a group and like just unpack the sort of what's going on in this document. And I'm going to go out to each of the rooms and put that link back in the chat for them, just so
Oh yeah, good call.
to make sure everybody's on the right page here, because whenever you do this kind of reading stuff,
Can you broadcast the link?
oh yeah, I bet you can.
You want me to do it, or you got it?
I'm going to try it right now.
Okay.
Broadcast voice, broadcast message. I don't know if it's going to work as a link.
Just try it, and then we'll know.
I know. Yeah, I'm having Zoom problems. Am I still live? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Something is funny. I've lost my mouse, so you try it. And
Are
then
you
I
full
gotta
screen?
figure out
No,
how
you're
to
not. Yeah.
Get my mouse working.
Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna copy the doc off that. Not sure that worked. Alicia, was she in another room? Alicia, were you in a, yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you just joining, or were you in a room already?
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry, I haven't
Oh.
been in a room. I've been having internet issues. I've been trying to get on
Okay.
several times
Yeah.
this morning, but
Yeah,
so
okay.
I should be
thought I
good
saw
to
you.
go now.
Okay, I'll put you in a room right now. There you go.
I'm being really
Bring
harsh
it
on
back.
cutting off conversations today. I'm sorry, but yay for having great conversations. So, okay, lovely. You can maybe see why it's one of my favorite documents in the whole deeper learning world work, because it sort of maps out like how you get to depth. You go from this big thing that's on a pretty graphic that looks gorgeous, right? You're going to tell the community, we're going to make your kids creative. Okay, but now we actually have to deliver and assess creativity. That's hard educator work behind the scenes. And so this document does this sort of wonderful job from my standpoint of helping get to digestible components that we can actually begin to implement, measure, be able to tell students like, oh, we're not seeing really advanced skills here yet on this. Like, to be more advanced, you would be doing this. So like that's, I just find it to be really valuable. So I'm hopeful it was valuable to you. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, we started talking about how to, like, we took the language of like, ChatGPT, and then we took the language in here and like, how could we get it down to like that learners and families and teachers that could all understand that language there. But it was a great unpacking exercise.
Okay, I think I want to make one last point. We'll close up shop for today. We'll circle back a little bit of this on Tuesday. We got Capono joining next week on Tuesday, and we're going to start to like get back to a little bigger picture. But this is almost as deep as the pool goes. And I did pre-build. So let me just do a little share screen so you can see what's available in the Padlet. We didn't get to use it all today, but it's there available. Go make copies. Like that's our mantra around here is like, we want you to go actually do this work. So you can see we were just over here in this activity. We just took a look at this one. We did not make it to this activity, which is our Jamboard, but you can make a copy of this Jamboard and use it in your own work. That's perfectly fine. What I think you would want to do next with a team is, so if you had a big portrait of a learner skill that was empathy, then you could begin to fill this thing out, right? And so you could begin to bring your own work together with the team in terms of, we're going to start to define what that was. So Mark, what was one of those sort of big sub skills of empathy that you all resonated with?
Oh, Mark was resilience. I think.
They were resilience. Yeah, Kristen's team.
Yeah,
Kristen's team.
Kristen, yeah.
Kristen, Aaron, I think, was on that team. Well, okay, we'll just say that collaboration lived here.
Yeah.
You can begin to say, like, what would we want to see in elementary versus middle versus high? This is if you're working at a district level. If you're just working at a school level, you wouldn't care about all that, right? You would just want to be at your school. But then you would want to begin to map it out into, like, what does early stage, what does middle stage, what does advanced look like? Now, you look at this language, beginning, approaching, meeting. I'm intentionally telling you I like it. Where did that come from? So copy the Jamboard. It's all available. You guys can play with it. I don't think we'll have time to come back with it on Tuesday. So I just make copies, whatever you all want to do. But I intentionally am using that language because I want us to remember where Francis Parker Charter Essential School was at. And remember, I told you, like, they're making this thing simple. They're getting this thing down to something that is sort of easy to implement and sustainable. And remember, they were using this language, beginning, approaching, meeting. And you heard her in that video say, and you can go watch the hour-long video from Francis Parker Charter Essential School, where she intentionally does not like the word master. All we need to do is meet, right? And so here is a scale that's a 3-part scale, beginning, approaching, meeting, where they were keeping this a lot simpler. So while we can see what a complex rubric would look like, that can live behind the scenes at the educator level. And what actually gets conveyed to kids and families is something more akin to like an X on this little beginning, approaching, meeting continuum there, right? So from a simplicity standpoint, I really like how Parker has implemented simplicity while behind the scenes, they are doing complex work as educators. But to the kid, this whole thing is a lot more simple than like 50-page rubrics and everything else. So I'm just bringing that back to mind for us, that you can implement this more simply than everything is feeling right now. Okay, so those are just some tasks that you can go take those Jamboards and play with. And then as you are implementing in your own spaces, you might consider that beginning, approaching, meeting kind of approach of Parker versus the approach of Envision, which is like these 4 different categories, and the approach of that document, which was 4 different categories. For Parker, it feels much more like a sort of a continuum, and you're somewhere on this continuum. Okay, this is hard, big stuff. Ben, I know, yeah, bring us back and summarize. There's also the other thing I want to remind you is there's great videos from Competency from KnowledgeWorks. KnowledgeWorks has done a great series of 5 cartoon-like videos, but they're actually really good as you are working with your teams to help them know what you're going to do, right? So if you're going to lead this kind of work at your own school level, you're using this combination of tools to help your team get to these documents.
All right, so we have an exit ticket today. You know how I love my thinking routine. So we want to know where you're at with your thinking. So on the Padlet, if you scroll all the way to the right, you'll see a thinking routine, the Think, Puzzle, Explore, right? So what do I think about competency-based education? Share a little of your thoughts. What still puzzles you? If you can shrink that down, maybe if the last puzzling, you just sort of summarize that for us or synthesize your thoughts. And then what do you still want to explore about competency-based education? It could be the same as what puzzles you, but we're super interested to know. So let me drop, for those who need it, I'm dropping the Padlet link in there. You probably all have it, but just in case, go all the way to the end, scroll all the way to the right, and you'll see that that thinking. So just share your thoughts with us. We're super interested to learn. I think Justin and I were talking about actually taking this and actually blowing it out for like a deep dive session, because as you can see, it's complex. There's a lot, too much for one day.
When you're just getting started, Mark's just getting started with the work. And so, you know, I'm just going to use you as an example for a minute, Mark. This is not what you do on day 6 of implementing deeper learning. Okay, so you don't have to have this feeling that like, I got to know how to do all this immediately. You don't. But what you do know, you do need is a leader who knows we have to get this far. This is where we're going to go. It might be a year and a half before we begin to start to lay down these rubrics and competencies like that. That's the normal kind of timelines these things take. Remember, it's going to take you 6 months just to get your community to agree to your big portrait of a learner skills. But I don't want you starting that road, a portrait of a learner skills, without knowing we're going to have to unpack those into competencies. We're going to need to be able to measure them. We're going to need to be able to distinguish what sort of beginning looks like versus really good looks like.
And then there's a work, I mean, even more work around communicating how this works to your communities, the professional learning that goes around it, to upskill teachers. You know, there's a lot of moving parts. So there's no way that it's and I've seen it done poorly quite often because people try and rush it, and they also don't respect the process. I think we talked with Mark a little bit about this after our session on Tuesday, is you really have to respect the process, and you got to keep people on board and bring them along for the ride, because it's not you that's implementing this, it's you that's facilitating the process of implementing this, and everybody has their piece. So, okay, I'll stop talking because it's 3 after. We want to let you go. You guys have an exit ticket. Thanks for your time and attention at work today. Any parting thoughts?
This was great. Thank you.
This was the deepest we'll go. So good job. We've made it through what is really the hardest, deepest part of the work of the academy. And so now we sort of work our way back to a big picture. Capona's going to talk landscape, model, ecology when we get back on Tuesday. And then remember on Thursday, we want to hear from you. And so, you know, that's the small steps that you all are undertaking. Like on Thursday, we want to hear a little bit small steps. The NKU team, like you all just presented at exhibitions yesterday, the NKU, the Northern Kentucky team, sorry, got to get out of university world for a second there. Oh, sorry, complete mess up. The Northern Kentucky co-op team that was, you just presented yesterday. So present the same thing. Don't feel like you got to do something new.
Aw. Yeah, thanks. It was like a sprint uphill today, actually.
Hey, I'm trying to give you all your money's worth.
I know. I don't need to work out today. I'm good. My workout's done.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks all. I got to run. Bye. We'll see you next week.
Bye. See you next week. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question about our slides? Because Lori and I were talking about this yesterday and wanting to know how we put our message together. I know you'd said about, sorry to keep coming back to the time, it just helps me organize my thinking on the slides. Should we be, like, I think it might be helpful if Lori and I are thinking together as a school-based team about what our next steps are. And then, but we got thinking we're going to be in breakout rooms. Would we necessarily be in the same breakout room? Would be the first question, like presenting together or not. And then should we double our time to 10 minutes or just keep it at 5 minutes as a school-based team? So we're just thinking about how to put that together. Just wanted your feedback.
Yeah, you're working in the same team. I would say do it together, right? You're going to be working together going forward. Am I right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So then just remind us when we send people out to breakout rooms to put you in the same room.
Okay.
And then you'll have the same amount of time. I mean, roughly. I mean, we're not gonna be super hard on you know, we're not gonna like mute you at 5 exactly, but we're just kind of giving you a rough guide. Yeah.
Oh, so Lori, there you go. Our workload has halved to 2.5 minutes each.
Yes.
See, I'm the resilient learner, as you can see, trying to bring our time down for each participant.
Well, sometimes that's more difficult, right?
Yeah,
Actually
that's
condensing. True. Yeah.
Just so you know, I saw Lori in the parking lot and she's like, I spent a lot of time on ChatGPT. She pretty much like made a gigantic mind map that she could have probably shared today, you know, kind of like, here's a competency, what are the sub-competencies? And then like the mind map apparently was like branching out quite a bit. So I'm looking forward. I might let her take the whole presentation. So
Nice.
Grace, thanks. This is
Okay.
really awesome stuff. I just look forward to the upcoming next sprints because as you're charting this journey, it's like, wow, this is a daunting task. And like I wrote down water on rocks, strategic patience, like having that mindset at the outset.
Yeah.
Like I said, last session, I thought, oh, well, let's just crank this out in a couple of months, right? Now it's like, oh, maybe a couple of years.
You're going to get early wins. Exhibition night's going to be an early win. So
right.
Like you're going to feel winning happening quickly, but you as a leader know I've got a journey ahead.
Well, and that's why this next sprint wrapping up, I kind of feel like the Sherpas took us halfway up Everest, and now it's like, okay, see ya. It's like, oh no, otherwise we're gonna run out of oxygen and fall off a cliff, you know.
Yeah,
so
no. We got you.
Okay, right on. Anyway, thanks for today. It was awesome.
Awesome. See you guys. All right, Janelle, you hang out, yeah?
Yep. I'm guessing Emily is probably not there. So, Emily, anything from you?
No, okay.
All right. Sorry, Janelle,
right.
we just exhausted you, and now like, hey,
I
let's
know. I'm just taking notes. So just like, ooh, it's all great. It's just to know. Yes. organized and like with the end in mind and where we go across with this all. Yes. And that's why I have you as my support here.
Sherpas.
Ah,
Never been called a Sherpa before. That's new.
Yeah. Okay, so I think what we wanted to talk, just to gain a little bit more of an understanding, we talked briefly last time, and you were sort of talking about like who you wanted to like bring together for this, and just sort of what was your vision on that, and like,
okay, so when I had Capona and Susanna talking to the principals the other day, the component that we're going to be, I mean, I would love to have the support of Susanna, Capono, you guys, or whatever one of you, or however this is going to work. And what they're trying to do, Ben and Justin, is to put like a package together for my districts. So like, what does this look like? Like, we know that we want to do the work of the Portrait of a Graduate. That has been said many times by our administration and superintendents.
But this is like the group of 6 that you're working with, or?
So this is the group of, my 6 districts, yes, they're administrators. So the administrators from the 6 districts. So what I want to do is like to form that administration leadership team. But then also the second piece of this is to create the committee of teachers. So this leadership team, the why and how of this science of learning, this Portrait of a Graduate, this leadership team of the why and how do we start, like you're saying, how do we start designing? How do we start assessing this type of work as we put the Portrait of a Graduate into play? So I have 2, what I talked about with the principals on Tuesday was getting those 2 groups, like that's the cohort of the year. There'll be 2 cohorts. There's going to be a leadership cohort and there's going to be a teacher / whatever cohort there running. And what school can be is trying to figure out is, what does this look like? And I know Ben and Justin, if you've had any conversations about this, about what I'm saying right now with what school can be with Capono or anything, but what we're trying to do is figure out that package. What does this look like? Like, what would they get? What would they pay? What would we get from in person? What would we get virtual? Those kind of things are what we're trying to package. It's like, go ahead.
I know how we did it in Kentucky, which is not Minnesota, and it's a different context, it's different people, all the things, right? So, and Ben has gotten to see our Kentucky, how we did the work in Kentucky. And like I said, literally yesterday, we just wrapped up another cohort. And so I have a sense of that package, specifically at the leader level, although we have a package at the teacher level now too. The teacher package is a lot more online, digital, than the leader package is a little bit more on-site. That said, I really want to be cautious to not too heavily corrupt the sort of, this emergent work that is happening both for you, Janelle, in your region, with you as a leader, and for what school could be simultaneously as they are emerging to try to learn, like, how do we support people like you who are serious, who are trying to move a region. Like, what is screaming to me is this is the right collaboration. This is the right place to be. In that what school could be, this is an excellent purpose for them going forward. And simultaneously, you are actually doing the work that moves things for real, not like, let's have a conference and we all feel great about it in San Diego. And like, no, for real, I want actual change in real public schools, not like go create a charter school. Like, in real public schools, do real change. So you're doing that. And what school could be is sort of finding their right purpose. So that's why I'm very cautious to not just throw Kentucky at it. So I want to answer questions and provide support, but simultaneously want to let it emerge. So I'm going to defer some to Ben. and you, and let you guys sort of say like, this is what I think could work here.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, like, what is the outcome that you want to see? So like, I think I want to get sort of specific. And so like, you know, if we think about sprints, right? So, you know, even the sprints that we've had so far, like each sprint had a specific focus.
Mhm.
And so if you want to put together a package for leadership, you know, what is the outcome that we want to see, right? So we can, and the beauty of sprints is we can get really specific, right? So we package these 3 sprints together because it sort of like gives you a baseline understanding of like what you need to know to like start the work,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then as people move into that work, you know, then there's like what we talked about today is like a whole sprint, right?
Yeah.
Like, because it's when you're actually in there doing the work. We're supporting you by bringing you together,
Mhm.
guiding the conversations, giving you tools, examples, you know, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, so I'm just wondering like where, because I know you're already on the go, right? But do you want to just like bring everybody and start from a specific spot to say like, let's get everybody on the same page? Because sometimes we're operating on assumptions, right? And like, that's
Yes.
where, when you have that misalignment of assumptions, like this word means that, or I mean, really
Yes.
basic stuff,
Yes.
that can get like, that's where people get really frustrated and get like anxiety and things start to break down. So
Yeah.
it's almost like, not like, you know, we don't think you don't know this, but we're actually coming together because we all want to have like the same understanding. Like, you know, we want to get our thinking out of our heads
Right.
and onto the table. We can all think together, and we're all starting with the same understanding about what it is we're talking about, where we're going, you know,
Right.
those sorts of things.
Right. So are you saying, Ben, getting together with our What School Can Be people and us? Because that's where I think it needs to, because Capono
Yeah.
was bringing up to our principals about this, how Kentucky and What School Can Be has put together, and he was bringing that also up to the principals. And that's what I think we do. We need to get on the same page, really lay out like, what do I know the wants of my districts are? Like, I know that. So then how do we put together these intentional sprints that are going to, by the end of the year, that we've accomplished those wants, for a better word, those wants
Needs.
our needs of our North Collaborative districts. And the big things that keep coming out from the North Collaborative districts is that portrait of a learner. That's a big thing. A second thing is how do we start to change the way that our teachers start to design so that we have that intentionality around bringing the humanist skills, like of those skills in there? How do we design so that we're using our community in rural schools? Community and place is very huge. So, you know, that piece of it there, connecting our learners outside the walls of that. So I'd love to get together and really put that. Yes, like, what does this package look like? How does Susanna come into this? How do you come into this, Ben? How does Compono, myself? How does
Yeah,
this
I don't think
look?
so I'm not so worried about that, like who's
Okay.
doing what, you know, because like that's, we can pick, you know,
guys
we
just
can
do?
pull
Okay.
in who needed, right? Like, don't
Okay.
worry about that.
Okay,
What I hear you saying, one thing is, you know, without, so I'm trying to be like, you know, honoring the experience, but then also like, sometimes if you ask somebody what they want, they don't know, right? If they knew, they would be doing it, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
So what I think we can do though is identify where we want to go,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so, and then articulate that clearly,
Mhm.
and that through that process, then what we can emerge from
Yeah.
that is these things that we're talking about.
Yes. and we
Not,
can
these are
backwards
the,
design.
yeah, exactly, right? So these are the ways that you get there. Like doing these things get us that
Yes.
outcome,
Yes, yes.
right?
It's kind of like that,
Uh,
like, if you start thinking about when we first went through that science of learning, right? Really
Yes,
kind of that
yes.
why behind it. Okay, what does that look like when I start bringing the science of learning? Like what big pieces, because I don't have them every day, I don't have for long, but what does that look like? Then what's our next? Kind of like you were talking about yesterday or Tuesday was that playbook, right? Of these different things to
yeah.
get to where we're going.
But that, okay, so that's a perfect example of the science of learning. So we have to sort of take a step back from business as usual in the classroom to revisit, like,
Yeah.
what do we actually know about the science of learning, right? So the science of learning tells us that the way we should be doing things is this, right? So then that leads into, let's talk about,
Yeah.
competency-based education, because that it supports deeper learning, it supports agency, it supports equity, all these
Right.
things, right?
Yeah.
And so we kind of know, we don't want to say you need to do these things because XYZ. We want to say, like, what are we trying to do? Right? Oh, we're trying to do these things. Well, here we go. This is how we do that.
This is what it's
Right.
going to take to get us there. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay,
think that's
so-
what I just need.
so-
I need some support around that of like, yes, how to really organize these different pieces, around that science of learning, the portrait of graduate, those kind of pieces there. So as we work with the leadership team, and then I work with my teacher team, because that's what I'm going with this year. I'm getting rid of, I was telling you two about the 1910 system that I walked into, and I'd have 3 or 4 people, and then you talk about the standards, and that's all you talk about, the standards. And so my principals decided, and I'll see what the superintendents decide, but they're really looking for a committee, probably elementary, Justin had brought up, elementary, high school people that can really run, and then can also lead things back in their districts for this type of learning, because I'm not there all the time. So to sustain it, I need to get people out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I think that the conversation needs to go, is with, and who is that with? Ben? Is it Capono? I mean, who's the what school? Like, who's it with?
Yeah. That, well, me and I think
Educators, focus on
yeah.
educators, Janelle.
Yeah.
People that have been in classrooms. So, educators resonate with educators
Yes.
more than professors. I'm a professor. I'm
Sure.
good with leaders.
Sure. But as we start designing this, like, since Capone and Susanna are kind of already in the mix of, they're going to have the meeting now again with the superintendents this next Thursday. So they're starting to plant this and then see who's going to jump on it.
Right. So
With
yeah, I think
cost and-
like you'll yeah. So I think that's great. So Susanna and Capono are really good at like that piece,
Right.
like getting the conversation started, getting people to start to
Right.
come to an understanding, and then the next step is like, let's do some stuff.
Okay.
Like, let's like create a sprint, or we'll use,
Yeah.
the sprints that we have.
Right.
You were in the science of learning sprint, right? So,
Right.
but we
Yes.
have, I think, what needs to, not what needs to happen, but what would be nice to happen is when through the conversations that Capono and Susanna and lead. Susanna's great because she could lead both too, the professional learning and the conversations. Is to help them clarify what they want next,
Yes.
based on what comes from that meeting, right? And
Right.
right. And so then you say, well, we have a progression, a series, so we have this, and this, or if we want to, I think a timeline would be really good, like you said, like backwards plan. So like
Yep.
by the end of next year, what do they want to have done? Like after, you know what I mean?
Because if
But
they're
I
going
also
to pay
think,
for something, I mean, because it's going to be a cost. I mean, there's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be some cost, like, what are they? They're out, what are we getting for our money?
yeah,
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I want you asking that because you want to build a sustainable model. We just finished year 12 of running our academy in Kentucky, right? And so, when you get something started, what you're likely to find is not everyone is going to resonate with it, but of a particular group that you bring together, you'll have 3/4, 75% will be like, oh, this does sort of sound better. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really love traditional school. I'm pretty tired of the damn testing game.
Right.
And so over half will come to the work. But so what happens next year and the next year?
Right.
And more people will keep coming. And so you want to have a sort of sustainability concept early, in that we are building financial models upfront that can sustain the work for both your little cooperative regional entity, right?
Yes.
Because whatever that thing is on your logo there.
Yeah, let's go.
That
Yeah.
exactly, like they need to keep paying the bills for this thing, so they need to make you all need to profit a little
Yeah.
from this, not a lot, but at least enough that whoever the executive director is like, this is at least not losing money.
Right.
So
Right.
and so that's a piece of this equation. So the whole thing can't wind up costing you so much money that it's completely unsustainable. It can't cost the district so much money that they refuse to pay in previous years, in future years. So you got to sort of find a happy financial medium to come to. What that meant for us in Kentucky, and I don't know how it's gonna sound right now because there's sort of a silly amount of money in the system. But what it meant for us in Kentucky is we ran the academy, a 7-day year-long academy, at a cost of about $1,000 per participant for the whole year. That has worked and sustained. I think it can be done a bit less than that, and that's part of why we've been trying to move a little bit towards sprints and a little bit more digital,
Sure.
particularly because getting teachers out of classrooms right now, because substitutes are such a problem, that like you almost got to have something that we don't take them out of classrooms. Like we got to have to do this job, but can't pull them out of the classroom.
Yes.
And so that's partly why we've been shifting a little bit as well.
Okay.
But that kind of a number, though, Janelle, as you think about it, is going to be a little shocking to your superintendent pals.
Right.
They're going to
Right.
be like, whoa.
Because they pay for my service too, right? They pay the co-op.
Oh,
because
okay.
for the
So
co-op.
maybe, right, which we're not. We're just a university, right? So
Sure.
there is no other money exchange going on. So
Sure.
maybe in your case, the base fee of being a member of the co-op helps
Yeah.
to compensate some of.
Right,
some of
right. You know, and I just think, can we share that amongst our districts? You know, like, okay, we're gonna share this split it amongst our 6 districts. Will that help us like look at that cost differently? Or yeah, because the money's gonna be, I know that's gonna be always the conversation.
So I
It's-
think, yeah,
But it's not bad. It's just another thing we have to figure out, and we are all invested in figuring that thing out.
Yeah.
To make it work and sustain, we
Right.
just gotta figure it out. And I
Right.
think talking to Capono, Ben's been talking to Capono. They want to get into the services game
Mm.
and be able to put a price on something and
Yeah.
then deliver a package that
Yes,
people like you are in love with, because maybe a co-op next door is gonna fall in love with it.
right.
I've
Right.
got Montana sort of on standby. At some point, I gotta get Montana started again. And so they want to do that, and there's gonna need to be a price point, but I also think they if they're like us, I mean, schools don't have a lot of money, so you've got to do this efficiently.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think
So I
there's
think-
a viable price point. I do think there is. I think it's about half. If I had to put my thing out there, sorry, Ben, I've talked too much. You take over, Ben.
no.
I
Like,
think
you know,
there's a price
I have no concept, honestly, of money, like when it comes to the States. You know, like I was talking to my business partner yesterday, and I was telling him, we were talking about something about the academy, and I said $600, and he thought I meant per session.
This is how we
That's-
run.
Yeah. Yeah, and I said, no, for the whole thing. And he's like, for 12 sessions, you couldn't believe it, you know? He's like, started doing the math and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But so I think, so what I would like to do is like, I think the dream team is like us 3, Capono and Susanna.
Yep.
Right? And then the superintendents, or
Yep.
the leadership.
Yep.
But what I would like to see is a sort of Venn diagram, if you will, of like leadership academy, teacher
Yes.
academy, but then like an overlap where they come together to do the work,
Yes.
some work, right? So that would be really fun, I think, because it would put them in the same room having the same conversations,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
you're looking at more of that alignment,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. So I think what will happen is after they talk to the superintendents, then I think then we need to get on together of what they're going to send out to the districts, you know, kind of like a thank you for their time, but this would be, so I think that's what's going to happen next after they talk to the superintendents.
Like what the package is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So do you like the idea of like an academy, or do you think like individual sprints would resonate better?
I'm thinking more of sprints because of our time of taking them out of the classroom, their time. I'm thinking more of the sprints.
Okay.
Mhm.
Meaning, but sorry, what I mean by that is
Okay.
like an academy as a collection of sprints,
Oh.
or like, so we're saying like the package we actually call in
Oh,
What School Could Be, like whatever, you know, academy, right? So
yes.
that they're actually thinking, okay, I'm gonna go into something and I'm
Sure.
gonna leave with something, right?
Sure.
And inside that academy, we break it into, you know, I'm just saying, because we have the three things that like we've covered, right? Are
Yes.
these three things. So like when we're done, you're gonna have like, you know, we can use the same terminology, you know, like, right? So like
Yeah.
your
No, that's what I
emerging
would- yeah.
understanding of like, you know, these aspects of blah, 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 right?
Yep. Yep. Yes. No, that's what, yes. And then having
Yeah.
those umbrella underneath that.
Yeah. And then we could say, like, if you really want to like geek out hard, we could say, like, basically, let's run the academy like we just did, because
Yeah.
you have a good understanding. That gets everybody on the same page. Then we say, okay, we're going to take a break. You guys go away, you do your work. Maybe you start with the community, right? You get everybody excited. Then we're going to, in 2 months, take a deep dive. We're going to do this sprint as a deep dive into this aspect,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Or, you know,
Sure.
that way we can map out the year, but
Right.
kick everybody off with
We're gonna need to map it out. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that map would help us out a lot. Yes.
Yeah, help us. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All right. What do you think, Justin?
Yep, you guys are doing the right work, and I did that layering of sprints into an academy. I mean, we did it that way this year because that feels to me like something that can export and that you can run with, you know,
Yeah.
and that eventually you can run sprints without necessarily needing anyone from What School Could
Sure.
Be,
Sure.
you know, and so like that.
Yeah. Think about the third time you've done, if you've done this academy again, and then the third time you could probably lead it.
Right. Right. Right.
Because there's going to be other people that identify, resonate, and you're going to have as teammates locally. There will be local teammates begin to emerge.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be like, boy, this school is really good at this.
Yeah.
And like, instead of Justin sharing about what this school in California is doing, we should just share what this school is doing, you know, 10 miles away.
Right. Right.
And so that was for us too. 12 years ago in Kentucky, we only had non-Kentucky models. That's all we talked about, was stuff
Okay.
going on in other states.
Okay.
But by the second or third year, we already had our own stuff to share.
Yeah.
And so it changes pretty quickly, and you have expertise coalesce pretty quickly, where I do think What School Could Be has a long-term interest. What I would like to see them do is make long-term investments in a few locations. That
Okay.
long-term investment is a shared financial investment where they're investing the most valuable resource, which is time.
Sure.
But there is some money being exchanged, so it keeps them in the game. It pays for people's time, keeps Ben in the game.
Yep.
But like, make some long-term investments in a few places.
Yep.
And really start something for real, start a movement here.
Right.
Instead of this big global, Ted's completely unrealistic. Like, it's just gonna happen. It's just gonna
yeah.
happen. Right, exactly. We're gonna build the mighty network and then it's gonna happen.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So like, that's very unrealistic. And I've tried to tell him that in the past, but I think you have to learn it this way. There's only one way to learn it.
But
and
also
that
you
is-
need someone who's thinking that way so that like, that's actually, there is no end, right? So we all are just moving in that direction. He's pushing everybody in that direction.
But you're gonna do something amazing. And then like right across the border over there in South Dakota or whatever, they're gonna be like, what the?
See, and that's just it. And I even just think in Minnesota, like I almost would like to propose this to the Southwest West Central Co-op. Like, why don't we offer this almost like your letters, right? Your train, they're like, why wouldn't we offer this? Not just even amongst my 6 schools, but this would be
But-
my entire role, right? Like this would be
So
what.
yeah, but see, do it. It's gonna go well. Do it
Sure.
well. Then the sun's gonna be shining on these 6 schools, and everybody wants to stand in the sunshine, right? So let's just,
Good point.
and it's also it's nice to do it small first. It's a
That's-
pilot. You know, you get to make all the mistakes before everybody notices, right? And then you
Yeah.
fix it, and then you move on. Yeah.
Great thinking. Those small,
Yep.
yep, start small and then
Yep.
we'll just keep rippling out.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to then, after our superintendent's meeting, probably that following week then of like because we'll need to get something out to these districts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a proposal.
Okay,
And Ben and Capono, like it's on you all to sort of translate into her. We would do a scope of work all the time. As next gen, when a district or a region came to us and asked us for a relationship, right, which is essentially Janelle's asking for a relationship, we would then go back and do a scope of work. So, you know, we heard, we listened, and like, so here's what we think we would do. We'll do this many days for this price point with this many participants, whatever.
okay,
And then you negotiate from a scope of work rather than just like all big ideas. Like at some point, it's just got to get super tangible. And so Ben and you and Capono probably need to translate into something pretty tangible before very long. And I can help with that. I can show you what scope of
Yeah,
works
yeah.
look like.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we talked about it on Wednesday. We're gonna talk about it again on this Capone and I this coming Wednesday. So he's meeting with your superintendents on Tuesday. Is that what you said?
Thursday.
Okay, so next
Yeah.
Thursday. So it'll be the following Wednesday that we'll
Okay.
touch base on it, and then we'll sync. But yeah, this is great.
That's wonderful. All right, here we go, leading the charge. Let's go. All right.
Let's do it. All right.
Let's do it. All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Yep,
Janelle.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye,
Bye.
Okay.